Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the National Parents Union's Let's Get Real National Town Hall Series. I am Jason B. Allen, your moderator. I am also the NPU Partnership Director and super excited about this conversation and having you engaged in something that I think we all are curious about. Now, the theme for this special town hall is celebrating National AI Literacy Day. Today, Friday the 19th, is AI Literacy Day. So, if you are viewing this from your maybe school district, if you're a homeschool network, if you are viewing this at Google or maybe a corporate office, or if you are in the community barbershop or town hall, we want you to get connected. Make sure that you are going to nationalparentsunion.com and getting connected to our amazing work, as again, we are focusing on AI literacy and what parents and families need to know. Now, please make sure that you are leaving comments in the comment section. Most importantly, we want to draw your attention to the comment section so that you can get resources, information, and of course, see some of the things that are working well with AI. And you may get to learn a little bit about some of the parent and family concerns that we have received through our national NPU database and also our national polling to gain information from our base. Now, again, this week we are celebrating AI literacy. I am super excited to be a Catalyst Fellow for the EdSafe AI Fellowship Program. They are one of our partners helping us with this amazing initiative. And there are some amazing events happening throughout today for AI. So if you see anything happening with AI, know that NPU is definitely supporting, and we are very much so connected to the conversation. Again, if you are viewing this live, we want you to understand and realize that we are streaming this live for AI literacy and that we have some amazing guests that are joining us in a few seconds on this workshop centering AI literacy and what it's all about. Now, as I promised, we have some amazing guests with us on this special day as we celebrate AI literacy. I will be remiss to say that this town hall is also a part of our Read to Rise campaign. It houses everything that we do with literacy, including the Let's Get Real Town Hall series and our Lit University, which is pretty cool. Lit for literacy, right? And so all of these things are connected to our Read to Rise campaign, and we want you to get connected. Now, as the moderator of this beautiful event, I get to introduce some amazing people. And I want to kick us off with, of course, this wonderful woman who I get to work with on a daily basis and who I would say is a masterful leader, y'all. Now, everybody doesn't have a good leader to work with and work under. So I'm super excited to have good leadership that I work with and someone who has helped to make this possible. Tafshir, I'm going to pass the microphone to you to kick us off with introductions. You're muted. This is the power of technology. Okay, Tafshir is still muted. I don't think she can hear us. So, Dr. Anashe, we're going to let you tap in while Tafshir is getting her volume connected.
All right, mic check. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, mic check 1, 2. You know, we have to be an MC here. How are you guys doing? My name is Dr. Anashe Wright, talking to you all from the Atlanta, Georgia, Decatur, where is greater is what we say. I am so excited to be here. I am the founder and CEO of Disruptive Partners. We are an education innovation firm. We work with superintendents, school districts, and local communities to use education to enhance lives. I am excited to be here. My most important role is to be the mother of two joyful, peaceful, powerful Black children. And thank you for creating this space. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Super excited. Tafshir, let's see if we can tap you in now. One more minute. Okay. Dr. Jordan, let's go to you.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much. Excited to be a part of this fantastic panel of powerhouses. My name is Dr. Jordan Morozak, the project director for the Safe AI Alliance, primarily concerned with ensuring that as preconditions for thinking about how we use artificial intelligence in teaching and learning, we need to make sure that we are keeping students, parents, communities, educators safe, as well as making sure that the outcomes are equitable as primary considerations before we go any further. So, enjoy be with you.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Sherry, we're coming all the way around to you.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. My name is Sherry Birch, and I work in a science center in San Jose, California. We're called the Tech Interactive. I'm the director of education resources there, and I have the privilege of getting to work with a wide variety of educators and assisting them with professional learning. My background is also as a middle school science teacher, so I bring that lens also of having been in the classroom. And I also have my two own children, one adult, one in high school. So as we're exploring this new world of AI, I get to bring these different perspectives together in building that knowledge in our community. And the Tech is really excited to be one of the flagship sites and founding organizations of National AI Literacy Day. So we're very excited to be here. Thank you.
We heard that statement about being one of the original founders and helping make this happen. So, again, to the Tech and Share, we're so thankful to have you guys on this platform with us and to bring that historical knowledge. Now, Tafshir, we're coming to Jersey to make sure that we can get you tapped in.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
we
me?
can hear you. Yes,
Yes,
we hear you now.
yes. Thank you, everyone. Apropos that we are talking about technology, and my technology is acting wacky today. Super excited. National AI Literacy Day. We are excited at the National Parents Union to be hosting this conversation, to be a part of the EdSafe AI Alliance, really thinking about community engagement. How are parents engaging in AI? I'm Tafshir Cosby. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, native Newark, Jersey girl. I'm a mother of three adults and a grandma to three beautiful, beautiful children. They are my G Squad. They are the next generation. They are going to be the users of this AI in their schools. I'm excited to learn with them. I'm excited to learn with other parents more about how do parents get more engaged in the AI conversation that's happening at their schools. I'm really thinking about how parents can be engaged, educated, and also involved in what's happening with AI policies and things that are happening in their school, also things that are happening in their community. So super excited to be here and happy to be heard. Thank you.
We are so excited to have everyone join us. I want to say that uh, NPU has an amazing AI presentation for parents and families. If you are interested in getting connected to this training and workshop that we provide, I need you to do two things. I need you to contact Tafshir Cosby at tafshir@npunion.org. That information was on our screen and available for you. And I also need you all to get connected to our Education is a Civil Rights campaign that houses our technology coalition and all of the work that we're doing around AI. So you too can be a part of how we're connecting parents and families to this conversation. Now, for this panel, we asked that everyone put their questions inside of the chat. We know that there are lots of questions. I had an early morning um, walk run with the grandparents and seniors, and because we are in Atlanta, a lot of the grandparents were like, "Are you saying TI or AI?" Because we are home of hip hop and all things moving forward in music. So the grandparents are like, "I'm trying to get them to stop listening to TI, but you want me to get connected to AI." So there's a lot of questions around what is really happening with this amazing work. So I want to get us connected to this conversation and start us out with Dr. Jordan and Sherry with our very first question, which centers this. We know that AI, which is better known as artificial intelligence, has been around for 20 years, maybe 20 plus years. The newest, or the latest form that everyone is getting connected to is generative AI. What does our parent base, what do parents and families and communities need to know about generative AI? Sherry, we can start with you, and then Jordan, we'll go to hear from you as well.
Sure. So I think as a parent, honestly, the first thing that comes up is a little bit of the fear of the unknown. And I think it's important to know that even though generative AI feels new, it doesn't have to be scary. Like you said, AI has been around for a long time. AI in general is really already ingrained in our lives. I know that I appreciate that when I have to write emails, that my emails kind of generate themselves. So I feel like it's a tool that already is part of our lives, and parents can kind of embrace that idea of generative AI being a tool that can be really helpful to us. I think that another piece to remember is it's an incredible opportunity for us to empower our children to be creative in new ways and to be really deep critical thinkers. Critical thinking, I think, is a skill that our children have increasingly needed in the age of the internet. And I think AI is really going to push that need for new deep skills and conversation around how AI is changing our world and how it could help us to be really innovative problem solvers.
Yeah, I think I want to echo and plus one what Sherry mentioned there. I think I'll say two things. One is don't be scared by acronyms. Right? They use generative AI, LLMs. Like we see all of this language, and I want to specify in a very straightforward and descriptive way that generative AI is just describing a tool that takes input in some way, shape, or form. Right now, a lot of it is text based, and creates an output. It generates something generative using artificial intelligence, right? And so the output can be something that is also text based, like as Sherry was describing, sort of like an email. It could be an image, it could be a video. Some audio happening now that's actually not too bad, but I have a background in music education. So I used to teach a history of rock and roll and a history of hip hop class. So it's not at that level yet. We're not getting anywhere near some of the Grandmaster Flash stuff or otherwise that I'm sort of like near and dear to my heart. So it's not that good, not yet. But the point is that it's creating something, right? And then I also want to say too, sort of like demystifying like what actually it means when we talk about generative AI. The other side of it too that I think is really important for family, caregivers, community members to know is that you don't need a doctorate. You don't need a degree to have an opinion about this, right? And I think that in many ways I'm preaching to the choir here. But I do want to voice the fact that like community voice matters in this conversation, right? And so there are many ways in which a person's experiences, a person's own personal wisdom plays a role in this conversation. So I think becoming curious about it is really important. Asking questions, digging into it, and not being afraid to tinker, to ask questions for people, for family members. Maybe find some local community classes that are happening. But also, I want to acknowledge that you don't need to accept it, right? Like we are in a place where our personal decisions matter with regard to technology, and so experience it. Figure it out. It may have a role. It may not for your own personal life, personal family, personal choices. But I think it's important that we acknowledge that all voices need to be a part of this conversation, and that's really one of the primary drivers for the work that I think we're really interested in at EdSafe. That I come in my own previous work from kind of an intersectional justice background. That I think it's really important that we acknowledge that all of these voices matter in this conversation. And that's the only way that we see real and meaningful change when we talk about equity and justice.
You cannot have equity and justice without having all voices at the table. And I hope that people were taking some good notes because that really answered a couple of other questions we had around equity and inclusion, which unfortunately is under attack in our country. Now, I want to go in this direction and take us to our second question of the town hall. And everyone is still concerned about the safety and well-being of our children. I can hear some of my former students who have a podcast, and they have recently been talking about cyberbullying and just some of the issues that they are experiencing through technology and also the advancement of AI. I want to go to Dr. Anashay and Tafshir and ask the question, what are the impacts of AI on social learning. I know this connects to health literacy and social emotional learning. So we'll let you all tackle this aspect of the conversation for us.
All right. Tafshir, you want to go first or?
I'll let you go, doctor.
That is a great question. AI, I think to Jordan's point, one thing that is critically important, whether you like it or not, you need to understand it, right? And I think people need a baseline understanding, right? To be empowered by AI is to be educated by AI. AI for me, when I speak about it, I speak to the power and potential it has for Black communities, for historically ignored communities, for our children in school. AI became a friend for me, and I call AI my ally. It became a friend for me when I first got my diagnosis, my adult diagnosis of ADD. In professional spaces, I had a lot of great things to say, but my brain, as a neurodivergent, my brain moved faster than my hands could move. Um, I fell in love with the tool in 2019, and the rest is history. At that point, I was building a program in an alternative school. I was building an intervention program, given a group of 12 students, 100% with IEPs, 100% had multiple discipline referrals. Attendance was below 60%, and I would say they were failing two or more classes. When I asked kids to write, right, and the focus was on literacy, when I asked kids to sit down and get ready to write, and I would give them a prompt. Um, I remember one student saying to me, Mama, write, that makes me feel like a tornado is in my head. When you ask me to write, there's a tornado of a million thoughts going on in my head. And I brought in the same tool that I use for myself, and I let them speak their genius instead of writing it. And for the first time, kids actually knew that they were smart and brilliant. They can see their thoughts on paper and then edit it, share their stories. And I think within 45 days, they increased by half a grade level. And these were middle school and high school students who had been told they couldn't read. So AI has the power to capture the genius of children, to capture their thoughts. AI has the potential to serve as a coach and a thought partner. So when they are dealing with cyberbullying, they have a place to kind of get through that. And I think AI also has the potential to widen the wealth gap. So AI, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I just think that number one, we have to educate parents. We have to educate the educator workforce, and definitely our local communities and schools.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And plus one, everything that everyone is saying about making sure that parents are educated, right? For parents, it is a scary situation out on the internet. And for a lot of parents, some of the AI tools, parents actually learned them from their kids, right? I had no idea what TikTok was, no idea. My grandchildren actually like introduced me to TikTok, and my first thought and feeling was fear, right? Like, is my child putting their information out here? Are there people who are, using my child's data for bad things, and putting them really at risk? So I think we think about for kids and for parents thinking about how this is affecting them socially, right? We know that even during COVID, kids were isolated. They were isolated in their rooms. They were using some of the social media platforms. They weren't coming out. They weren't being social. They weren't around people. We know that that leads to a lot of depression in kids. And when they started to go back to school, a lot of them really had to acclimate themselves to being in community with their fellow students, being in community with their teachers, because they have been so isolated. So I think for as we think about this as health literacy and as parents, we need to make sure that we are monitoring, depending on the age, but I think all ages, even up to when they're 18, maybe if they live in your house, really monitoring the way that they're using social media, monitoring the time that they're actually using social media, hours and hours, and thinking about specifically for AI in their schools, how are these tools being used in school? Are they using things like Chat GPT and generative AI to be able to answer questions on their papers, right? I went to an AI conference in California a few months ago, and the students there were like, we don't use it for cheating. I don't know if I believed all of them, but they said like, we don't use it for cheating. They use it really to think about how the questions and the prompts will actually help them to be able to better think about how they're actually writing their papers and how they're getting information. So as we think about this as, again, health literacy, as parents, make sure that you know as much as possible about how your children are using these tools in school, outside of school. Be able to use it yourself. Learn yourself. How are you using this? How is it affecting your life? I actually have a timer on my phone that stops me after 4 hours from being on social media because I know that I can go overboard. Right. So as parents, think about your own health and think about the way this is affecting your children's health.
I love that. Brain breaks is what immediately came to my mind when you mentioned that timer Tafshir and just allowing children. I'm old school and new school. I think the children still need to run outside and play and still get connected to board games because they need that time away from the screen and holding that device and being able to connect with people. So Tafshir, thank you so much for including that with our focus on health literacy. Now, I want to take us in the direction of digital literacy, and Jordan, we'll kick it off with you first for this question that really goes into what role does the digital divide play and what are some of the barriers to equitable access to AI education and resources? So we want to look at maybe some of the barriers that are impacting people both on a systemic yet also a grassroots level. So Jordan, we'll kick it off with you first, and then we'll hear from Dr. Anashay and Tafshir.
Yeah. So I think something that comes to mind for me there is the acknowledgement that we already have a digital divide, right? So AI is only going to amplify that, right? It is not something that will create a new situation. We know that this thing exists. And so it will act as a catalyst and an amplifier of our current situations. Because I think something that's important to acknowledge is that any technology is the accumulation of human decisions, right? And that means those human decisions have implicit and explicit bias, right? So we need to understand that it is not somehow neutral. It is not perfect. It is the way in which the people who have designed it show up in the world. And so I think the questions around the digital divide are also the questions of the divide that we have socially and societally to begin with, right? Like you could remove digital there to begin with. And I think it's important to acknowledge that when we talk about these systemic issues, they're systemic cultural issues and social issues that also manifest in education, as they manifest in healthcare, as they manifest in any other area that we talk about. So I think it's really significant to acknowledge the flawed nature of any technology that we have, which is not to say that it's evil, right? We just need to understand that it has limitations and know how to work within those limitations and call out those biases, limitations as much as we can, right? So those are important things. And then lastly, I'll say that any change, coming back to what I mentioned earlier, any meaningful change needs to involve all parties, right? And so there is both a way in which policy, as like a top-down perhaps entity, has a role to play, and there's also a very vital place for communities to play, right? And so I think it's both of those things coming together and being able to partner to the best of our ability and create those collaborations that will enable us to begin to close the existing divide, because we know it's in place. And we know it favors very much people who have higher education background, right? We know it maps to things. That was not a thumbs up. I'm not sure why my computer did that. It wasn't. That's AI right there for anyone who didn't
Yes.
see that. Well, that wasn't me okaying the thing by any stretch. But it is acknowledging that, like, we know that it maps to people who have privilege already, right? In the exact same way. And so to the extent that we can, we need to acknowledge that and work against those privileges to make sure that it is much more equitably divided.
Awesome.
I think, you know, thinking about how we close the digital divide, it's like Jordan said, we could put anything in front of, take the digital out, and it'd be divided different things. But I think even thinking about the EdSafe AI framework, right? Safety, accountability, fairness, and efficacy. Thinking about the fairness part, right? Like making sure that our communities have access to broadband, right? Like literal access to make sure that they are able to connect to the internet. We know right now that is under attack, right? There was funding that was allocated, and now it's currently under attack, where you have some of these families who are in rural areas or are in areas where broadband itself is not great, but they have some access. And thinking about these families who may not even have access at all to any type of electronic signals to be able to connect at all. That is that's creating a chasm for the digital divide, and thinking about some of these families who won't be able to connect at all. So I think we have to think about, like Jordan said, policies and community voices and ways that we can make sure that even at the most basic level of providing, free or low cost broadband access to families is something that we are all protecting and speaking out on to make sure that it's happening in a lot of our communities.
Wow. Dr. Anashay, Sherry, did you have any comments you wanted to add?
Absolutely. When we talk about this divide, right, we talk about it as a like a clear point A and point B, right? As if there is a bridge, right, and we're closing a gap in the middle. But if we would, I think we actually need to think about it as a table, and we need to be building new tables in communities where there is a continuous cycle of, okay, are you connected? Great. Okay, do you have access first? Are you connected, right? Do you have the knowledge? And then do you have the skills to leverage it? And I think far too often in our communities and schools, we talk about one or the other, right? And let me be real concrete. In my work, I advise, in my 9 to 5 work, I advise superintendents. And I remember when the pandemic hit, the big thing was our kids didn't have access to internet. But when we looked at platforms, we saw over 90% of students accessing the platform. So the question wasn't, did they have access? I want to say it was like 93% in a major district in Metro Atlanta, but it dwindled. So the issue in this particular case was not access, it was just whack instruction, right? You actually didn't have the knowledge or the skills, right, to do it. So you're being disrupted for good in education. And I'm gonna tell you this, education is long overdue for a good disruption, right? And so it gone are the days. I think Jordan said it. We need these local hubs to play, right? We need to be able to play, not just access it, not just are we connected to it. Do we have baseline knowledge, and can we leverage it in a way that
Very good.
enhances our lives? So we need to build new tables. Ain't nobody coming to old broken whack tables. Don't nobody need no bridges, right? What we need are continuous cycles of discovery, of play, of leverage, of repeat.
Awesome. I love that. Sherry, let's go to you.
Yeah, I love that, and I'd love to build off of what Dr. Wright said. At the Tech as a science center, serving as a resource to teachers, we understand that not all students have access to the same digital tools. So we try to build those foundational pieces. So the lessons that we have around AI are generally unplugged because they're getting into what is AI, what's the baseline, paper version of that activity that you can do to understand what's happening with AI and what we know and what we don't know, and how bias in our data sets affects our outcomes. So students can start to be informed and be ready for those conversations and have opinions. So that when they're using those tools, however they gain access, they can be part of that conversation. And 100% changing the conversation in schools. We can't deny it anymore. We can't say, well, I don't want to use the internet. Social media isn't in my classroom, because it is. It's there for every student. We really have to be ready to address those things as parents, as teachers, as community members.
Awesome. I love that. And I want to just share a little data from NPU on the digital divide, that across the country, we have about 22% of low income households that lack internet. So about 22% where they don't have the actual access to internet to be able to continue learning at home successfully. I also am curious about this data point that I think speaks to a lot of what both Sherry and Dr. Wright spoke about, is that over 54% of these families don't have consistent access to internet. So they may be able to get on some apps and some games, but it's not consistent enough for them to do adequate research and maybe build projects and be connected to learning communities that are online. So the access is there. I think the consistency is something that we want to see better improved. And there is an affordable connectivity program. If you go to nationalparentsunion.org, we may be called the plug for most people, but we are a connector and we have the resources. So please make sure you visit our website for all of these things. Now, I'm going to shift the direction a little bit. I want to get us into hearing about some of the amazing um, offerings and programs that each of your entities have, but I want to take us to cultural literacy and its connection to AI. We have heard from multiple families who have multilingual, setups in their households, and really want to get into the question around how are we navigating cultural literacy with AI so that everyone is represented in how this is shaping the future. So, anyone that is interested in tackling this question, please tap in.
Is that okay? Dive in.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I think this is like a really interesting thing to come from what we were just talking about, because like when we talk about that access divide, we know that people who are using AI and who have a fluency of artificial intelligence are people who are who look like me, right? First and foremost, right? We need to call attention to the fact that like it is college educated, those who had the who have been privileged enough to attend higher education, white middle upper class men who have access to it. And I think that tying that into what you just asked, if we know that that is true of the access and fluency with regard to AI, we know that that is especially true of the tech industry writ large, right? And so those who are designing technology also replicate that model. And so there is an incredible lack of access, but also an incredible lack of diversity in those who are designing and implementing artificial intelligence systems. And so flowing out of that, we know that they are incredibly biased against those who are English as a second language, right, or multi-language speakers. So we need to do due diligence and sort of interrogate not only the use of the systems, but the design of the systems as well, right? Because again, that bias, whether implicit or explicit, is there, and it creeps in. And if that is true of both who is using it, it is especially true of those who are designing it. And so it is a spectrum that we need to be aware of, and that we need to call attention to and call out and demand change around.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think this is a place where we definitely need to make sure we have the right community stakeholders at the table for these conversations. We hosted an AI session, Jason and I, at our NPU convening, and we spoke about parents using generative AI as a translator or using like AI as a translator. And our Latin families were telling us that like it is not
That's
a
right.
good tool. It does not the linguistics of it, the way that it works. They were not supportive. They were supportive in being part of the conversation to fix it, right, to make it better, but they were not supportive in the way that they currently work. So this is really, again, as we think about how we're bringing community to the table, really thinking about making sure we have our families at the table as these tools are being created and designed.
Very good. Very good. All right. We're talking about cultural literacy and language, and I just want to also add in that, even though we are all mostly from America, we have different dialects across our country. And I'm from Atlanta, better known as the Dirty South. And so if you cross over to South Carolina and you get into the Geechee culture, they talk very different than we do. If you travel to New Orleans, they have a different dialect that they use, even if you cross over to the deep south of Texas. So I'm just giving that example of different dialects within the South, and how that also shows up in AI. Our dialect is very different. So thinking about cultural differences and linguistics and language, it all plays a role in how AI is shaping the future. Sherry and Dr. Wright, I want to see if you guys can open us up with this next question that again is still centering maybe some ethical things in regards to making sure that everyone is included. How can we ensure that AI education, this is probably more of policy, more curriculum, how can we ensure that AI education incorporates ethical considerations and also fosters critical thinking skills to empower future generations to navigate the ethical implications of AI technologies in both their personal and professional lives. So Sherry and Dr. Anashay, let's kick off this question with you all.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question and kind of build off of what we were just talking about too. Um, I'm not always an AI optimist. I think I tend to have some of those fears myself, but I feel like there's such an amazing opportunity for us to make more connections to other humans. That's where my optimism is, that having access to other languages, even if it's not correct, as that beginning stepping stone, and then really leaning into some mindsets around curiosity, right? Is that
Nice.
correct? Is this the right communication for you? Collaboration. How can we work together to make it better? How can we be curious together about what this tool can do and what it could do? And then empathy, understanding that this tool is not a person, that this tool only has part of the story, and really connecting with others to fill in those other pieces. So I think in the way that the Tech Interactive is approaching it, we're really leading with those mindsets. As we know, those mindsets are helpful for any kind of innovation, but
Yes.
especially as we're approaching AI and how to make them really useful tools, leaning into absolutely those interpersonal pieces and definitely that curiosity. Sometimes I'm like, maybe very critical, but it's curiosity is really the better word, because that also gives an opportunity to think about how to improve it, how to use it in ways that it's not been used, and how to use it in ways that the people who've been working on it have never thought of, right? It doesn't apply to them. It's not useful to them, but there's so many other ways that AI might be useful in different communities. Um, and then if I might, the other piece of that question is around, ethics. And so the other lens that we're coming to is curiosity around data. So what kind of data are we are we giving AI? And then what is it learning from that? I was able to go to a summit at Stanford, and there was some really interesting conversations around how learning happens and how we're not
Wow.
totally clear on how humans learn. We're also not totally clear on how computers are learning. And so there's some really interesting studies happening kind of in parallel of, did a human learn the same thing from this data set as the computer learned? Why did the computer
Wow.
learn that differently? So I think that kind of information is so fascinating and another opportunity for curiosity.
I love that.
Oh man, there's so many levels to this conversation. Say new levels, new devils, right? Um, I'm I'm trying to really think about what I want to prioritize saying. So I think for me and my African American community that I have always known was brilliant. But historically, when we think about slave codes, right, we think about laws that prohibited our communities from actually reading and writing. We talk about literacy. Well, literacy is in every area, right? And to be literate in
Yes.
this, we got to have a real conversation. We live in a country that worships the written word. And I mean, truly worships the written word. If it's not in a Google Doc or a Google Deck, it's not real. But now you're telling me, right? We have the power to say game on in our communities. You want a one pager and a doc and a deck? I'm gonna give you three, right? We have the ability to speak our genius into a book in 3 minutes and sell it and generate another revenue stream. When I saw Chat GPT, I had been secretly using this. When I got ready to write a grant, I spoke it into my my speech to text tool. Okay. And I was, for the first time, I knew that I didn't have a problem communicating. Even in dominant white spaces that told me, oh, you can't communicate in a linear, well, I'm not typical, and neither are our children in these schools. For the first time, we can capture the brilliance and genius of communities and people that we could never hear from. You want to worship the written word? Bring it on. Let's teach these communities and schools how to leverage AI as an ally. I got 10 besties I use every day, and it has allowed me to grow a organization. My children know how to leverage it for good, and I want to make sure that every community and school does. And we have to make sure that these voices are at the table. I'm in Atlanta struggling because I don't know Sherry and Jordan, right? So if it weren't for you all, NPU, being a bridge and a connector today, this wouldn't even be possible. So I do expect us to partner and do great things. after today, right? Because we need each other. It's the sum of us that is more powerful than any one of us.
That is powerful. And I will say that a lot of parents have been reaching out and saying, wow, we are looking at again our NPU data, and about 50% of families feel comfortable with AI and that their school districts are going in the right direction. But when we dive deeper into that, a lot of teachers are still saying, hey, we have no clue what is going on. And also, a lot of teachers are not trained in the science of reading, which is why this town hall series is a part of our Read to Rise campaign for NPU. As you can see, we're connected to so many different aspects. So again, check out our website and get connected. As I'm looking at time, I want to hear from each of you. We'll start with Sherry, and then we'll go to Dr. Jordan, followed by Dr. Anashay, and then Tafshir. I want to see how we can maybe learn a little bit more about the initiatives that your organizations are working on around AI, how it's helping define AI literacy, and why this work is important to the conversation that we have been having this afternoon. So, Sherry, we'll start with you. We'll go to Dr. Jordan, then Dr. Anashay, and we'll have Tafshir reel us in with how parents and families can get connected through the work we're doing with NPU.
Of course. So the Tech Interactive, we're a science center, and our goal is really to build knowledge in the community and to inspire conversations. So I would say, first we're wanting to engage and inform, and leave our guests inspired. So our current AI exhibit has actually been around a long time, and it's actually aimed at very young students. It's called Animaker, and students basically get Duplo blocks, and they're told to build some kind of an animal, and then the computer will scan it and tell them what kind of animal it thinks they built. And so it's a really fun, engaging, playful activity. And the computer is not always right. So there's some struggles between the ability of young children to create something that looks like an animal, right? There's some skill gap there. And then the computer's limited data set of what different forms this animal might possibly take in different interpretations. So it makes for really interesting conversations around the limitations of this AI tool and what would make it better, and what it can learn from interacting with so many people. So that's kind of where the tech is now. We're working with other science centers across the country to consider kind of what our next steps are, how we can bring AI into exhibits in a new way that also connect them across the country. As Dr. Anashay was saying, we don't know people we don't know yet. So I think this could be a really interesting opportunity to combine the work that we're doing and connect us across regions. Again, informing our AI of more than just our own communities. We're on the West Coast, so we're West Coast people, but we're pretty unique to that slice of the country, and there's many, many other communities that need to be included in that conversation as well. And the other piece is looking at kind of provoking conversation. So our current exhibit is very engaging and playful. And so we're looking at kinds of exhibits that really are more thought-provoking and really bring you face to face with the realities of what AI can do and how it may affect the way that we interact with technology in the future. So, and that will definitely bring in more of that conversation around bias in data, and what AI is telling us. Is it telling us things that are true and based on facts because it had the data it needed, or did it make things up and tell kind of an alternate story that's not true because it didn't have the facts that it needed to tell that story? So these are some of the conversations that we're looking to start and that we're having kind of with others in that same sector.
Before I start, I do want to thank Dr. Wright for giving us this very appropriate taking us to church moment on the written word. It's entirely accurate, and I think that we need to do much more in that area around the democratization of this technology, and the way in which we can approach it through a very specific lens of equity and justice. That's has to be a foundational element, and I think that foundational element comes back to for us at EdSafe around these sort of like essential preconditions that really need to be taken into account before we even get to how effective is a technology in a teaching and learning space, right? And so we have to lay the groundwork around safety, accountability, around fairness, transparency, and equity before we get anywhere else. I think that's like incredibly important in shaping this work. So the other thing that I want to mention for us at EdSafe is acknowledging that we do this work first of all to prioritize these preconditions and policy efforts. And that generally means that we work with policy labs around the country. We have a few right now, Canyon City, a small rural district south of Denver, El Segundo, New York City, Gwinnett County. So we're really trying to take this broad cross-sectional look of what this means, regardless of the demographic served, right? Knowing that these conditions need to be met for all learners, regardless of context. And then also thinking deeply about programs that we can offer, things like the fellowship program that was generously mentioned earlier, where we're really thinking about being diligent in service of those two programs, one of which is Women in Artificial Intelligence, and the other one is the AI Catalyst program, which we're honored to have Jason to be a part of. And I think acknowledging that there are already historically marginalized, historically forgotten about communities that are doing deep, incredible work that we need to amplify their voices in. And the other part of it is amplifying the work of other organizations like NPU, knowing that they are incredibly respected and doing deep, powerful work in this area too. And so to the extent that we can raise our voices and make more individuals aware of these organizations that have been embedded and that have expertise in this area, we want to partner with them to do good work across those sort of sector demographics, constituency demographics, because this involves all of us. We all need to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you for that. I will say, as far as disruptive partners, we have a multi-pronged model. So in our for-profit sector, that's where we work with school districts and public-private organizations. I'm really just seeking to partner with people who have solutions and want to actually get it implemented into local communities and schools. So for the first time, I am prioritizing real deep partnerships with people who have resources, because I think we could be over-resourced sometimes. AI is so massive that I've designed digital tools. Like my son and I, we designed an AI-powered future pathway coach. And it's fun, but it's not anything that I'm looking to push right now to test and refine and all that stuff. I'm actually prioritizing partnerships because it's going to take the sum of us. And then I think in my nonprofit, I'm just working to raise $250K right now so that we can have community-based, I call them AI equity accelerators. And what they are a series of workshops or like community-based learning over the course of the school year. It's a simple, scalable model that can be replicated. And just trying to raise funds to get this in more communities and schools so we can connect organizations like those of you here today to local communities and schools.
Well, thank you all for this amazing conversation. You know, at NPU, we really want to make sure that we are bringing parents' voices to these conversations, you know, as the parent-led organization across the country, really representing modern American families and really thinking about our voices as it pertains to the way that policies are being written. You know, we often talk about things being done you know, without us, right? Like our motto was like nothing about us without us, and thinking about some of the things that are actually moving across the country and policies and things that are happening outside of the community conversation. I'm happy that we are all on the same page, that we all need to be part of this conversation specific to AI and how this is being implemented in schools. How is it affecting our daily lives, and everything in every way, how we are all making sure that we right, making sure that we have the knowledge and tools that we need to be able to um, speak intelligently, but also to be able to support our families. At first we first started this conversation, we talked about specifically for parents, like the fear, right? For parents that thinking about AI really invokes fear from the very beginning. So we are working with parents to really think about ways that we can help them be more engaged to quell that fear, have them learn more about the AI tools that they're using currently, things that are happening in their kids' school, quell that fear of the unknown, not knowing is their kids' data going to be used, not knowing how this is going to affect their everyday lives. So, firstly, helping them to think about like how do we engage them and quell that fear, but secondly, how do we think about educating them, right? Like giving them more knowledge, giving them access to more knowledge about AI tools. Not just Chat GPT, right? Thinking about even things like facial recognition and different ways AI are being used in their everyday life. Like everyone knows about Siri, right? Thinking about how Siri works, how Netflix works. And then lastly, making sure that they are involved in the decision making and the policies that are being written. Part of our AR conversation, our convening with parents, was really thinking about uh, identifying some of the potential policies that they might start seeing in their kids' school district. Potentially some bans on their students and their kids being able to use AI. Um, Thinking about the tools that are being used, thinking about things like tutoring. Is it going to take the place of a tutor, of having like a physical tutor? Do our kids going to be moving to like virtual tutoring? So helping parents to understand that part and understand that they need to show up at their school board meetings, they need to show up at their state houses. A lot of these states are creating AI councils, right? Making sure that community voice is part of that council and making sure that they are really involved in the policies and the laws that are being passed surrounding AI. So things aren't happening to them, but they are part of the conversation and things are happening with us as a community. Happy National AI Literacy Day.
Yes, happy National AI Literacy Day. This is so amazing. While we're actually talking about AI Literacy Day, and before I go into a really important part of this conversation, which is our call to action, Sherry, if you're able to give us some quick information on AI literacy, the website, and also some professional developments that are being offered, I will close us out with our calls to actions and what is next.
Yes, thank you. So at the Tech Interactive, we're one of the founding organizations and flagship sites for the event for AI Literacy Day. You can find lots more information about different resources and organizations that are involved at ailiteracyday.org, including some professional development webinars like this fabulous one. The Tech will be streaming ours at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be doing a deep dive into curiosity in the age of AI, but there's a fantastic list of other live streams and also pre-recorded professional learning opportunities, and then a whole library of different resources that other organizations have put into that website so that they're all in one place. So definitely encourage parents who are also educators to check out the kinds of resources that are available to you and your children's teachers as well.
Awesome. And everyone, please make sure you are using the hashtag NPU AI literacy. So if you are going to connect to any of these amazing resources, we want our friends, our partners, and our allies to know that NPU sent you because we are intentional about moving this work forward. Now, parents, caregivers, educators, students, we did not get to all of the questions. I know you guys are thinking, well, when are they going to get into how are we involving parents and families in policy decisions around AI? And maybe some quick tips for students and families to learn about AI and get connected. Guess what? Major announcement. You have to stay tuned to the National Parents Union's website. We will be dropping some quick tips for you in our FAQ. And we also have some amazing resources that are going to be pushing this work forward in collaboration with our partners. So make sure you stay connected to our website. My next announcement. Our AI work lies in our technology coalition and our education as a civil rights campaign. AI is very much a civil right for all of our students. It's going to be advancing technology in the very near future. I used to teach my students the Jetsons, and if you remember the Jetsons and you remember Rosie, I'm looking at my room coming back from the national convening in DC last week with so many NPU parents and families, and I could use Rosie right now to help me get some things back together in my office. So when we think about AI and how it's going to be advancing us in the future, this will be a civil right for all of our students because they're going to need this in order to survive. So let's make sure that we remember that. Parents and families, here are your call to actions for what's next. We are asking that everyone who is listening to this take this back to your school districts. We want to hear from you and we want to make sure that parent voices are added to the AI team by June 30th of this year. Why June 30th? Because that's going to be closing out the federal fiscal budget year for many school districts. And if there are any remaining dollars for this school year, we want to make sure that that information is going to AI and it incorporates parent voices and how those funds are being used for the advancement of our children. We also are encouraging parents and families to host an AI work session. Now, if you don't know how to do that, guess what? Of course, we are NPU and we have free toolkits on our website for you to get connected to if you want to have these in ESOL nights or PTA, PTO meetings, special education meetings, parent teacher conferences. If you don't have the bandwidth and know how to do it, guess what? We already have toolkits ready for you to utilize and get connected. And again, everyone, whether you are a partner, whether you are a teacher, student, parent, caregiver, policymaker, go ahead and join our NPU Technology Coalition and get connected to our campaign that is bringing everyone together. Again, we are so thankful for this celebration around AI literacy. I have to thank Sherry, Dr. Jordan, Dr. Anashay Tafshir for lending your voices and also the resources that you have shared. Please join me in thanking all of our amazing uh, guest speakers. This will not be the last time that you hear from them. And also for those that are connected to some of our NPU work, the Let's Get Real National Town Hall Series will return in May as we are focusing in on financial literacy and numeracy. I know you guys are just falling in love with NPU all over again. We are connecting the dots with financial literacy and numeracy on May 7th. It's going to be a powerful conversation featuring some of our NPU parent leaders and partners. So make sure you stay connected. Please go to our website and check out our recent work around FAFSA. That deadline is coming up very soon. And for our non-English speaking families on April 17th, NPU will be back in partnership with the Department of Education to make sure that your families are connected to the resources and deadlines that are coming up. Again, we are a resource. We are so thankful that you have been connected to this conversation. Our time is up. So we are thankful again for each and every one of our guests, and most importantly, each and every one of you for being tuned in to this conversation in celebration of National AI Literacy Day. Go and check out the resources. Use the hashtag NPU AI Literacy. And again, thank you guys so much for participating. We are wishing you well. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Thanks.